Welcome to Mind Set in Stone podcasts, where we dive deep into the most compelling books on the shelf. Join hosts Dave and Poppy as they uncover the stories, themes, and ideas that shape our understanding and inspire curiosity. Get ready to explore the big ideas that leave a lasting impact. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Mind Set in Stone podcast. Today, we are going to really challenge a belief that I think almost everyone listening holds dear. It's a belief we're taught from, the moment we can walk and talk. It's woven into the fabric of our schools, our families, and our workplaces.
It's the belief that being nice is always the right thing to do.
Exactly. We're conditioned to be the peacemaker, to be the one who doesn't rock the boat, to be the reliable friend, the dutiful child, the employee who never complains and, takes on the extra shift without asking for a raise.
We wear our ability to tolerate stress like a badge of honor.
We do. We think, I can handle this, I'm strong, I'm good. But what if I told you that this very trait, this compulsive niceness, might actually be killing you?
It is a confronting premise, and frankly, it's a scary one. But it's the central thesis of the work we are diving into today.
We are exploring the groundbreaking book, When the Body Says No, The Cost of Hidden Stress by Dr. Gabor Maté.
A huge book. And the reality he presents is stark. When you don't learn how to say no to the demands of the world, your body will eventually say it for you. And it often says it in the form of chronic and sometimes fatal illness.
This is one of those topics that once you hear it, you really can't unhear it. It changes the way you look at your own behavior, the behavior of the people you love, and even the way you look at the medical system. But before we get into the heavy stuff, and we are going to talk about ALS, cancer, and autoimmune disease in detail, we need to talk about why this connection between personality and disease is so controversial.
Right.
Dr. Maté talks about something called the medical Bermuda Triangle. What is that?
It's a fantastic analogy for a systemic blind spot. Think about how modern Western medicine is structured. We've become incredible at treating acute problems.
You break your leg.
We set the bone. If you have a bacterial infection, we have antibiotics. We have a specialist for every specific part of the machine. We treat the organ. But in doing so, we've separated the mind from the body. We treat the kidney as if it exists in a vacuum, completely independent of the person's emotional reality, their history, or their daily stress levels.
Right. It's completely compartmentalized. You go to a dermatologist for your skin, a gastroenterologist for your stomach.
And a therapist for your mind.
Yeah, and rarely do they talk to each other.
And the Bermuda Triangle Maté refers to as this historical tendency for the mind-body connection to just disappear into the mist. Throughout history, great physicians have intuitively known that emotions drive health. But as we became more technological, that wisdom vanished. We started looking at the body strictly as a biological machine.
If the machine breaks, you fix the part.
And Maté is arguing that this dualism, this splitting of mind and body, is not just a philosophical choice. It is a fundamental scientific error. You cannot separate them.
And that is the mission of this deep dive, really. We want to explore how hidden stress, specifically the stress we repress to be good people, translates into physiological disease. And more importantly, we want to talk about how to reverse that, because this isn't just a doom and gloom session. Maté offers a roadmap out, which he calls the 7 A's of healing.
I think it's vital to set the tone right now. This discussion is not about blaming the sick. It is not about saying you got cancer because you didn't think positively enough, or you caused your own MS because you were too stressed. It's a cruel, incorrect, and shallow interpretation. This is about empowerment. It's about understanding the mechanism so that we can interrupt it. If you understand how the engine works, you can stop it from overheating.
So let's unpack that engine. Let's look at the mechanism. How does an emotion, which feels like this, intangible thing in our heads, a thought, a feeling, a mood, how does it actually turn into a physical disease in a cell? Maté leans heavily on a field of science with a very long name.
It's a mouthful. Psychoneuroimmunology. Or, if you want to be really precise and impress your friends at a dinner party, psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology.
Let's stick to PNI.
PNI is the study of how the psyche, so the mind and emotions, the nervous system, the immune system, and the endocrine are not 4 separate systems. They're one super system.
So they aren't just neighbors, they are like roommates.
Even closer. You could almost say they are the same entity. Think of it as a giant switchboard. We used to think the immune system was just this autonomous army that fought off bacteria, totally separate from the brain.
That's what I learned in biology class.
Me too. But we now know that the brain talks directly to the immune cells.
The brain sends signals to the white blood cells.
Absolutely. We have discovered that the bone marrow and the thymus, the organs where immune cells are manufactured and trained, have nerve endings going directly into them. The nervous system is physically plugged into the immune factory, but it gets even wilder. The immune cells themselves can manufacture hormones, they can manufacture endorphins, they're all speaking the same chemical language.
So a white blood cell can feel stress? Is that what you're saying?
In a chemical sense, yes. If you are chronically repressing an emotion, say anger, that repression isn't just a thought that stays in your skull. It's a chemical event. It releases specific neuropeptides. Those chemicals flood the system. And your immune cells have receptors, little keyholes, specifically designed to receive those chemical messages. So if you're emotionally shut down, your immune system receives a signal to shut down or misfire.
That is mind-blowing. It just collapses the wall between mental health and physical health.
They're the same thing. And when the immune system gets confused by these mixed signals from the brain, it can make mistakes. It can stop recognizing self from non-self. If it attacks the self, you get autoimmune disease, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, scleroderma. If it fails to recognize the non-self, like a mutating cancer cell that should be destroyed, it fails to destroy the threat, and a tumor grows.
This brings us to the definition of stress. I think most people, myself included, think of stress as, I'm busy, I have a deadline, I'm tapping my foot, I'm drinking too much coffee.
Right, that nervous energy?
But Maté says we're getting it wrong.
We confuse nervous tension with stress. You can be tense without being deeply stressed, and you can be deeply stressed without feeling tense.
Okay, explain that.
Hansi Lee, the father of stress research, defines stress as a biological response to a perceived threat. It's an objective physiological event. Cortisol dumping into the bloodstream, blood pressure rising, glucose flooding the muscles, the immune system shifting gears. That is the key takeaway for everyone listening. You can be physiologically stressed while consciously feeling calm. In fact, many people who develop serious illnesses describe themselves as very calm, low-stress people.
Right, they say, I never get angry, I never get stressed.
Exactly. But their body is in a state of chronic fight or flight because they're repressing so much emotion. They have numbed the perception of stress to survive, but the physiology is still grinding away at their organs.
That is terrifying. It means we can't trust our own self-assessment if we're disconnected from our bodies.
You can't.
It means our calmness might be a mask that is suffocating us.
Which is why we have to look at the personality profiles. Maté identifies specific personality traits that seem to correlate with specific types of illnesses. And this is where we meet the cancer personality or the autoimmune personality.
Let's talk about Mary. She's the opening story in the book, and she really embodies this autoimmune personality. Her story really sets the stage for the stakes here.
Mary's story is heartbreaking, and it is the case that Mary was a patient with scleroderma.
For those who might not know, what is scleroderma?
It's an autoimmune disease where the body essentially attacks the connective tissue. Scleroderma literally means hard skin. The body overproduces collagen, and the skin becomes stiff, the joints become immobile, and eventually the internal organs, the lungs, the esophagus, begin to harden.
It sounds awful.
It's a slow, suffocating process of becoming rigid.
And what was Mary like as a person?
She was the ultimate good patient. Maté describes her as gentle, deferential, always smiling. She was 40 years old, working in a lab, married to a man who was an alcoholic and abusive. She had demanding children.
So she was carrying everything.
The emotional burden of her entire family.
And she never complained.
Never. Even when the disease caused gangrene in her fingers, I mean, literally, her tissue was dying because the blood supply was choked off. She was worried about bothering the doctors. She was apologizing for taking up their time. She was protecting everyone else from her pain, while her own body was literally rigidifying.
There's a quote from Maté regarding Mary that gave me chills. He realized that her physical condition was a metaphor for her psychological state. He wrote, "When we have been prevented from learning how to say no, our bodies may end up saying it for us."
That is the crux of it. Scleroderma was her body saying no.
Explain that more.
Think about it. She couldn't set a boundary with her family. She couldn't say, stop, I can't take this anymore. She couldn't refuse the role of the caretaker. So her body created a physical boundary, a hardening of the skin that forced her to stop.
So the body literally created the boundary she couldn't.
It rejected her dutifulness because that dutifulness was destroying her. Her body became rigid because she couldn't be firm.
It's almost poetic in a really tragic way. The biology mirrors the psychology.
And we see this even more starkly in ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease.
ALS ALS is a motor neuron disease. How can personality affect your motor neurons?
It sounds improbable, but the anecdotal evidence from clinicians is overwhelming. Neurologists and nurses who work with ALS patients often comment on how incredibly nice they are. There's a joke in some neurology wards. If you want to find the nicest person in the hospital, go to the ALS ward. They're described as relentlessly self-driven, hyper-independent, and rigidly unable to ask for help.
So the people who never want to be a burden. There is that story in the book about the woman with ALS who could barely walk. It really highlights this hyper-independence.
Yes. This woman is in a wheelchair. Her muscles are wasting away. She's in the advanced stages of a terminal illness. And yet she insists on going to visit her elderly mother to bring her soup.
She's bringing her mother's soup.
Yes, she cannot walk, she can barely move her arms, but she is reverting to the role of the good child, the caregiver. She is ignoring the catastrophic reality of her own body to serve someone else.
Maté calls this compensating hyper-independence. Compensating for what?
Usually compensating for a childhood where their needs weren't met. If you learn early on that you are only lovable when you are useful, or when you are strong and not a burden, you develop this rigid independence.
So you build your whole identity around it?
You work hard, you help everyone, you never complain, you tell yourself, I don't need anyone. And eventually the nervous system, which has been running on overdrive to maintain this facade of strength, just collapses. It burns out.
It's like an engine that has been redlining for 40 years without an oil change. Eventually, the pistons just melt.
That is a very apt analogy. And then there's cancer. We've all heard of the type A personality, the angry, aggressive, shouting CEO who is a heart attack candidate.
Right, we know stress hurts the heart.
Well, we know stress hurts the heart.
Okay, what's type C?
If type A is the person who yells at the traffic, type C is the person who sits in the traffic, seething internally, but smiles and says, it's fine, I don't mind waiting.
I think I am that person sometimes.
I think we all are. Type C is cooperative, patient, passive, unassertive. They suppress negative emotions, particularly anger. They are the peacemakers who swallow their frustration to keep everyone else happy.
And how does suppressing anger link to cancer? This seems like a big leap. How does being too nice cause a tumor?
It goes back to the P&I switchboard we talked about earlier. We have these incredible cells called natural killer cells, or NK cells. Their job is to roam the body and destroy tumor cells and virally infected cells. They are the body's SWAT team. They are aggressive. They are meant to kill threats.
So we want our NK cells to be very active.
You want them to be ruthless. But research shows that repressing anger suppresses the activity of these NK cells. When you push down that fight response psychologically, you are biologically disarming your immune system. You're telling your internal SWAT team to stand down.
There was a famous study in Maté sites regarding women with breast cancer.
Yes, the Greer study from King's College in London. I remember this one. It followed women with breast cancer over several years.
And what did it find?
The study found that women who expressed anger, who demanded answers, who had what the researchers called a fighting spirit, had significantly better survival outcomes than the women who were stoic, accepting, and nice.
So the good patients.
The women who tried to be the good patients, who didn't want to make a fuss, died sooner.
That is a hard pill to swallow. It flies in the face of the power of positive thinking culture that tells cancer patients to just smile and be happy and fight it with love.
Maté is very critical of that superficial positive thinking. He argues that it's often just another form of denial. He calls it the tyranny of positive thinking. If you are forcing yourself to be positive when you are actually terrified or furious, you are increasing your stress load. You are creating internal dissonance. Real positivity comes from facing the truth, not painting over it. It's okay to be scared. In fact, it might be necessary for your survival.
So if being nice and repressing our emotions is so dangerous, if it literally disables our immune system, why do we do it? Why are we wired to hurt ourselves like this?
Right. It doesn't seem to make sense evolutionarily.
No.
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer lies in childhood. It comes down to a trade-off between two fundamental human needs, attachment and authenticity.
Break that down for us. These seem like abstract concepts, but Maté treats them as biological imperatives.
They are biological. Attachment is the drive to be close to our caregivers. For a mammal, attachment is survival. A human infant cannot hunt, it cannot run, it cannot regulate its own body temperature. If you are not attached to your parent, you die. It is that simple. The drive for attachment is the strongest force in the human experience because it is the prerequisite for life.
Okay, so attachment is job number one. What is authenticity?
Authenticity is the capacity to be who you are, to feel your gut feelings, to express your needs, to act on your impulses. In the wild, this is also a survival trait. If you hear a twig snap and your gut says danger, you need to be able to feel that and run. If you are disconnected from your gut instincts, you get eaten.
We need to be connected to mom, and we need to be connected to our gut.
We do. But what happens if your authenticity threatens your attachment? What if, when you cry or get angry as a child, your parent withdraws? What if your parent gets stressed or angry or icy when you express a need?
The child learns that being real is dangerous.
Exactly. The child learns, if I am angry, I lose mom's love. If I am needy, dad leaves the room. The child will always sacrifice authenticity to preserve attachment.
So we learn to suppress our gut feelings to keep the peace.
We trade our true selves for safety.
And that trade-off doesn't just go away when we turn 18 and move out.
No, it becomes our personality. We become the adult who can't say no because deep down, our nervous system still thinks that saying no means abandonment. We become the saint who helps everyone but ourselves because that was the role that kept us safe in our family of origin.
Maté shares a very personal story about this involving his own mother. It was about his limp. I found this so relatable because it shows that even the expert, the doctor, is susceptible to this.
This was a profound moment of self-realization for him. He was 51 years old, a successful doctor and author. He'd just had knee surgery and was walking with a limp. He went to visit his elderly mother at her nursing home. And as he walked down the hallway toward her room, he realized that he was unconsciously forcing himself to walk normally. He was hiding the limp.
His mother wasn't going to reject him for having a sore knee. I mean, she was in a nursing home. She loved him.
Consciously, he knew that. But unconsciously, he was reenacting a dynamic from his infancy. He was born in Budapest, just before the Nazi occupation. His mother was a Jewish woman trying to keep an infant alive in a ghetto. She was terrified, grieving her own parents who had been taken to Auschwitz, and overwhelmed.
So as a baby, Maté picked up on that terror.
He learned that his mother couldn't handle any more stress. She was at capacity. If he cried, if he was needy, it was too much for her. So he became the low-maintenance baby.
He suppressed his needs to protect her.
And, by extension, to protect his attachment to her. 50 years later, walking down that hallway, that programming was still running. Don't show pain. Mom can't handle it.
That concept of the parent being there, but not being able to handle the child's emotions, Maté calls that proximate separation.
Yes. It is when the parent is physically present, but emotionally absent or distracted. The child feels alone in the presence of the parent.
It's fascinating how deep this programming goes. We are running scripts written by terrified toddlers, and sometimes it takes something outside of us to show us what we are doing, like Rachel and her rabbit.
That is one of my favorite anecdotes in the book because it illustrates the biology of emotion so perfectly. Rachel suffered from rheumatoid arthritis, a painful autoimmune condition. She had a pet rabbit, and she told Maté that the rabbit would bite her or run away whenever she was angry.
Even if she didn't act angry.
Even if she didn't know she was angry. She would be sitting there thinking she was fine, maybe just a bit tired, and the rabbit would freak out. It would thump its foot or hide. She would stop and check in with her body and realize, oh my God, I'm furious about that phone call I just had.
So the rabbit knew before she did.
Animals read the limbic system. They read the pheromones, the micro-movements, the energy field. They don't listen to our words. They read our physiological state.
Right, they don't have that layer of denial.
They don't have a prefrontal cortex to rationalize things away. Our bodies are always telling the truth, even when our minds are lying to us. Rachel had learned to disconnect from her anger so effectively that she needed a rabbit to tell her how she felt.
That's a perfect segue. We've talked about the problem, the repression, the stress, the disease. We've looked at the mechanism of PNI. We've looked at the childhood origins. Now we need to talk about the solution.
Yes.
Because Maté is very clear. This is reversible. We can learn emotional competence.
We can. The title is When the Body Says No, but the goal is to learn to say no before the body has to. Maté outlines this process through what he calls the 7 A's of healing.
Okay.
These are practical steps to reclaim that lost authenticity.
Let's walk through them. I want listeners to think about which of these they struggle with the most. The first one is acceptance.
Acceptance is tricky because people confuse it with resignation. They think it means giving up. Oh, well, I have this disease, I guess I'm done, or I'm just a pushover, that's who I am.
So that's not it.
That is not acceptance. That is defeat.
So what is true acceptance?
Acceptance is simply the courage to accept the reality of the situation. It's refusing to deny the truth. It's saying, I have a hard time saying no. This relationship is draining me. I'm angry at my boss.
You're just acknowledging what is.
It's dropping the positive thinking mask that hides the truth. You cannot change a reality that you refuse to acknowledge.
It's looking the tiger in the eye and saying, that is a tiger, not pretending it's a kitten.
Exactly. And once you see the tiger, you can make a plan.
The second A is awareness.
This is about reclaiming the body's signals. Like Rachel and the rabbit, we need to become our own rabbits. We need to stop ignoring the fatigue, the tension in the gut, the headache, the clenched jaw.
I think so many of us treat those signals as annoyances. I have a headache, take a pill, keep working. I'm tired, drink more coffee.
Exactly. We treat the body like a machine that is malfunctioning, rather than an ally that is communicating. Maté says we need to ask, what is my body saying no to?
I love that question.
If you feel a pit in your stomach every time you agree to lunch with a certain friend, that's data. That's your immune system and your nervous system giving you intelligence. Awareness is treating your body's sensations as vital information, not just noise.
The third A is a big one, given what we said about cancer and NK cells. Anger.
This is the one people struggle with the most, especially women, who are culturally conditioned to believe that anger is unattractive or unfeminine. We are terrified of anger.
Yeah, we associate it with losing control.
With violence, with rage. But Maté makes a crucial distinction between rage and healthy anger.
What is the difference?
Rage is helpless. Rage is the infant screaming because they have no power. It is destructive, it's chaotic, and it spikes your cortisol. It solves nothing.
And healthy anger.
Healthy anger is simply a boundary defense. It's a surge of energy that says, stop, you're crossing a line. It's functional.
He describes healthy anger as relaxation, not tension. That surprised me. Usually when I'm angry, I feel tense.
That tension is because you are holding it in. You're fighting the anger. If you express healthy anger, when you just look someone in the eye and say, no, I won't do that, or that is not okay with me, there is a release.
So you don't even have to yell.
You don't have to yell, you just have to hold the boundary. The action for the listener here is to allow yourself to feel the anger without judging it. You don't have to act on it immediately. Just acknowledge, I'm angry, and that is okay. My body is trying to protect me.
Number 4 is autonomy.
This is defining where you end and others begin. It's the opposite of that enmeshment we saw with Mary, where she felt her family's needs as her own. Autonomy means practicing internal control.
So doing things because you want to, not because you should.
Precisely. It's about agency. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to or because I am afraid of guilt? Am I doing this because I want to or because I want them to like me? Reclaiming autonomy means being willing to disappoint others to stay true to yourself.
That is hard. We are programmed to avoid guilt.
Maté has a great saying about this. If you have a choice between guilt and resentment, choose guilt. Resentment is poison. Resentment is what kills you. Guilt is just a feeling that you broke a rule. You can live with guilt. You might not survive resentment.
Choose guilt over resentment. I'm going to write that down. The 5th A is attachment.
Now, this might seem contradictory. We said attachment caused the problem in childhood. We sacrificed ourselves for attachment. But in healing, we need connection. We're social animals.
Right.
Loneliness is a massive risk factor for illness. Some studies say it's as dangerous as smoking.
But we don't just need any attachment. It has to be the right kind.
Right. We need authentic attachment. We need connections where we can be vulnerable, where we can share our fears and our failures, not just our successes and our helpfulness.
So breaking that strong, silent type mold.
Exactly. We need friends who love us when we are messy, not just when we are useful.
Number 6 is assertion.
Assertion is the declaration of self. It's the statement, I am. It's the idea that you have a right to exist, to take up space, to have needs, purely because you are alive.
So you don't have to earn it.
You don't have to justify your existence by what you do for others.
Valuing yourself independent of your utility. You are not a human doing. You are a human being.
Exactly. And the final A, number 7, is affirmation.
What does he mean by that?
Affirmation is about moving towards something. It's about creative values. Maté talks about his own urge to write. It was a whisper he ignored for years because he was too busy being an important doctor.
And ignoring it was causing him pain.
Exactly.
So this is about creative self-expression.
Yes. Writing, painting, gardening, music, building things, anything that honors your inner spirit. It is affirming the life force within you. When we create, we are listening to our inner voice. And listening to that voice is the antidote to repression.
So it's about finding joy that's just for you.
Just for you, not for anyone else.
This has been an incredible exploration. To summarize, we're saying that the mind and body are not separate, they are a supersystem. That repressing negative emotions like anger disables our immune defenses. That being nice at the expense of your own reality is a health hazard. And that healing requires the 7A's, basically learning to be authentic.
That is it, in a nutshell. It's a journey from self-abandonment to self-reclamation.
Before we sign off, we like to leave our listeners with a challenge, something to take us from theory to practice. Maté talks about the power of negative thinking.
He does, and he is being provocative with that title. He doesn't mean being a pessimist or a cynic. He means being brave enough to look at what isn't working.
So breaking out of that forced positivity again.
Yes, we are so obsessed with positivity that we become blind to the negative things that are hurting us.
So the challenge is to engage in some negative thinking.
I want the listener to grab a journal or just open the Notes app on their phone. And I want you to answer this question. In what areas of my life am I saying yes when I want to say no? And what is the cost of that yes?
That is a powerful prompt. What is the cost of that yes?
Maybe the cost is a headache. Maybe the cost is resentment toward your partner. Maybe the cost is just feeling tired and drained. Write it down. Look at it. Make the invisible visible.
And as you do this, there is one rule we have to follow, Rick.
Compassionate curiosity. Please, do not judge yourself. Do not say, I'm so weak for saying yes, or I'm such a doormat. That is just more aggression toward the self. That is just more stress.
So how should we frame it?
Adopt a stance of curiosity. Ask, I wonder why I felt I had to say yes. What was I afraid would happen if I said no? Treat yourself with the same kindness you would show a terrified child.
Because in that moment, that is exactly who you are.
You were acting out of a childhood fear. Be kind to that fear.
Compassionate curiosity, I think that is the key to all of this. We are not trying to fix ourselves because we are broken. We are trying to understand ourselves so we can be whole.
Healing is a journey toward wholeness. It is never too late to start listening when the body speaks. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 80, the body is always ready to heal if we stop getting in its way.
By learning to say no where appropriate, your yes becomes powerful, authentic, and healthy.
That's the goal.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Start listening to your body today.
It has a lot to say.
See you next time on the Mindset in Stone podcast.
We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a spark of inspiration. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and check back for more episodes as we dive into new worlds of thought, one book at a time. Until then, keep your mind set in stone and your curiosity open. This has been a Big L Riz Media podcast, where big ideas meet lasting impressions.